Hey, chess friends, Mike Coplitz here, Royal Rooks of York, Pennsylvania. And I'm continuing my work with you on, well, I should say from the book, Best Lessons of a Chess Coach Extended Edition. I don't know if you could actually see that. I'll have it on the video, which I'll post later. Fantastic book. And this particular game is going to illustrate the weak color square concept or weak color complex. And I can probably set it up real quick so you can see it. Let me go to the DGT board and just grab it. I use a DGT board because it's easy to do these things. So here's a position. I mean, the DGT is going to think we started a new game, but that's okay. But you'll notice that these black squares or dark colored squares around the king are weak. There's no way to protect them with pawns. That's the concept. So let me put the board back together for us. We go back to position, get from the DGT board. These boards are pretty, well, they're reasonably priced now. I mean, the one I have was $1,000 when I got it. Still is because it has the Bluetooth. But you can get a pretty decent board and set for well under $500. There's always used ones out there. I'm going to turn the analysis on. Again, this I'm using is the Houdini Aquarium software from Chess OK. I really like the way they present it. Let me get some moves on the board. D4, knight f6, knight c3, g6. Perk defense is what it looks like. f4. I don't play the perk defense, so I can't tell you if that's good or bad. The book says this is called the Austrian Attack. Very aggressive. Why is it aggressive? Well, I like to explain things that aren't in the book, as you know if you watch the other videos. And then there are things in the book I don't explain because they're in the book. For those of us who are, when we were younger and learning how to play, of course, we were told the center is the key to winning the game. Well, that's one of the keys. That's an important one. And you can see by f4, white pretty much owns the center. But that's okay because part of the perk defense is going to be to wear out white's center and eventually be able to go on the attack. But right now it is a defense. Here we go. We got the black king is castled. And it's very interesting that the Houdini is saying that black has the advantage right now. And I'm not sure why it really thinks that, but I don't know how the Houdini software, the engine actually runs. So here we go. Let's see what happens. Now, there's all kinds of questions in this book that you can look at about this position and things that white can do. So you might want to look at those pages. That's like page 118 to 120. Bishop d3. Got to get castled. Everyone knows that. It is interesting. Black is still got a slight advantage in this position. Knight c6. White castles. I like white's position. I don't know why the computer keeps thinking black has got a better position. Black then plays g4. Now I like g4, bishop g4. Oh, it didn't catch the castling. Let's go back, see if I can get it to work. Quick look. Ah. The thing about the DGT software is sometimes it takes off those check marks on the castling. Castle. There we go, bishop g4. I should have checked that earlier. I like bishop to g4 because, of course, it pins the knight. It's a temporary pin to some degree, but still, it's still a pin. Continue with development. And now you notice it's kind of flipping back to even. So we're pretty much even at this point. And then black is finally going to attack the center with e5. He had to do it eventually. D takes e5. D takes e5. And then white does h3. Now, why is that a problem? Because I showed you in that quick diagram on the board earlier, you now have weak, see them, black squares. Now, they're not horribly weak only because there's a black bishop there. But if that black bishop disappears, these squares are really going to be weak. It's something you want to think about avoiding. Bishop takes f3. Queen takes f3. And then e takes f4. Which is interesting now because white has an isolated king pawn. And then the bishop went to c5, which is intriguing, which is fine. Computer didn't like it, if you noticed. Let me bring it back and show you. It's suggesting queen takes f4, which is a plus 0.43. White decides to attack the rook. I'm not sure why he would want to do that. And all of a sudden, black is back up almost a full pawn. So that's interesting. Knight to h5. So we're trying now. Black looks like is protecting f4 and is willing to give up a rook for it. And of course, white takes. Probably not a good idea. Usually if someone at a decently high rating starts sacrificing, you have to think twice about it. Bishop d4 check. And you can see now very quickly that the rook sacrifice, and eventually he could take this bishop. It gets that black bishop off this diagonal. And look at those weak squares. This is not good because this knight's going to jump into h3, and that's going to be ugly. So the king goes to h2. White brings the second knight in. Notice also, and I like to tell students that once you're developed, you'll notice that the people who win games the most, especially when you're at the lower levels, the pieces will start swarming against the king. And you could see this. 1, 2, 3, the queen is going to be 4. 3 pieces are swarming. There are 2 pieces protecting. So even though black is down material, he's got a much better position at this point. And the computer even gives it to him. He's down a rook at the moment. That's 5 points, plus a pawn. But yet the computer says, no, black is much better off. So now the queen has to move. So she came to d1. And notice the next move is also interesting. Queen h4. Again, why bother grabbing the bishop? There's no reason to. If you know your attack is going to win and you've sacrificed, it's fine. The other thing to think about is Dr. Trash said, if you have a piece like this rook here, which can't get into the game, then essentially it's like taking that piece off the board. So material-wise, black is down a rook. There it is. But since this rook is useless, he's not really down. He's not really down. He's got one heck of an attack going on here. This is pretty sweet. So white decides he's going to bring his bishop back. And he's got to do something about these weak squares. It also, prevents the bishop from being taken. And you're probably hearing some of my clocks go off. It's 4 o'clock. And that's in the live. When I redo this video and edit it, I'll be able to take the clocks out. Okay, so now we have an interesting attack. And we have what's called an interference move. Black's gonna go f3. And look what happened. Look at just the change. Let me put it back. This is why I love Houdini. I mean, that's just a gorgeous move. Rook takes f3. Now you're probably thinking, what good was moving that pawn forward? Well, I think you're going to see it in the next few moves. Knight to g4 check. King has to come back to h1. Knight to g3. So now you can see can you see it? The bishop, the knight. This square is not very good. All of a sudden, these pieces are just swarming. 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, one rook defending. Does not look good for white. Definitely does not look good for white. Rook takes g3. I don't think there's a choice there. And now instead of taking, I don't know if you noticed it, but watch this move. Goodbye queen, if he wants to take it. Goodbye queen. King to h2. Knight takes d1. Bishop g5. Bishop g1 check. That's going to pick up the rook. Of course, the king has to take. And now the queen takes. Rook takes d1. Queen takes g5. Now, the author who played black said white resigned at this time. And he does say in the book, and I would also note it, again, don't give up. Don't resign. Make your opponent prove that he can beat you. Now, material-wise, we can add it up real quick. For those who do points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 12, 17, 8, 9, 10, 11, 20. So material-wise, black is up. And at a grandmaster level or a national master level, sure, you're going to just, if you're white, you're just going to resign. You're going to lose anyway. But I would continue playing. Now, I'm not sure here. When we look up at Houdini, it's saying king to h1. I don't know why I would do that. I guess he could be trying to avoid the e3 check. I might consider something, oh my goodness, something a little different. The king is not really in trouble, I might move the bishop out. So I open up this file. And now we get to see why that's a bad idea. Now I'm looking at the board and I'm looking at Houdini and I know exactly why it's a bad idea, because the queen's going to come here, check, and fork the bishop. So let's put that back. So perhaps getting the king moved is a better idea. Let's get the king moved. I'm going to move him to h1 like the computer said earlier. Rook to d8. Now it says knight to e2 if you can see that on the screen. I'm not sure I really like that. But at the same time, I'm looking at the rook thinking, can I move the rook? If I do, the queen can come in to d2. I'm not sure that's that big a deal. So let's just move it for kicks. Computer wants me to do rook to d6, so we'll do d6. We'll assume whatever the computer wants we're going to do. It would be nice to activate that knight. If you go to d5, let's see, if you come to d5, you can just kick you out with the pawn, so that's not a biggie. I don't know, let's try something like that. And it doesn't like that at all. You can see the number just skyrocketed. Now what's nice here about Houdini is I can say, okay, let's just click on one of these lines and we can see what the aftermath is. And there it is. There's the aftermath. It's a queen versus rook endgame, equal number of pawns. So that's obviously not going to be a good idea. So let's bring b5 back. That's a bad move. Notice the computer doesn't know there's nothing good for white to do. He just says, move the king back. Okay, well, I'll move the king back. Now we're going to come to f6. And where are you going to put that rook? You don't want to trade rooks. That's just a really, 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 really bad idea. It says b1. What happens if we go to e1? c6. Now, since he's going to ask for the king to come back to h1, I think it's getting pretty clear that we're getting near the end here. I wouldn't move the king to h1 because you could see the rook's coming to f2. That's just going to happen. And I don't think you can prevent it, but maybe by knight d1 you can prevent it. Yeah, and look at this. Look at the minus. Well, that's a bad idea because the queen's just going to come down to d2. Now the rook's going to have to move and the knight's going to be lost. So that was not a good idea. That's why I like the DGT. You could just flip it back and forth pretty quickly and say, okay, now what do I do? Well, let's see what knight to e2 brings. And that's just as bad. So let's put that one back. So the safe bet is king to h1. Rook to f2. g1. e5. Notice he's exploiting these dark squares. He's now on this diagonal. He's down on one of the squares. There's nothing for white to do here, but just wait for the end. I'm not sure what the a6 is for. But you can see that black is bettering his position. There's no rush. There's no time. Just kind of wait. I think the queen can come back to g1. And now it's just a matter of starting to move pawns forward. So I think you get the idea that white can't do very much of anything. There's really nothing much left. He's got to hang on. His rook is stuck. His king is stuck. The bishop has nowhere to go. The knight's pretty well trapped. You can see there's just not a whole lot going on here. Instead of b3, I'll do b4. Yeah, that doesn't help because right now that pawn's going to drop. So you get the idea. So I hope you found this interesting. And like I've noted earlier in the other lessons, the books tend to stop where the game stops. Some of them tend to go on and give you some analysis. Some of them don't. I tried to give you some analysis here, but it's pretty obvious. There's just nowhere for white to go. Even if he brought this pawn to b3, something like that, it's going to cause him all kinds of headaches. So take care. I'll post this on the website so you can see it. I'll be doing more of these lessons and having these live sessions. It's great to see everyone. Again, Mike Koplitz. I'm with the Royal Rooks of York. It's a scholastic chess club in York, Pennsylvania. I also have scheduled some time on Monday. I believe 4 p.m. is when I'll be broadcasting again. If I decide to broadcast before then, I'll let you know. Now, the Monday broadcast, by the way, does have Zoom with, not Zoom, it has a life size with it, which means I have a meeting room where you can come into the meeting room and then we can dialogue about the position and you can ask questions or ask me anything. So take care and happy chess.